frozen. Okay. So there's this email that the character sends to the sommelier that he discovers, and it begins with the subject line, an impassioned plea, I think, for attention. So I'm sort of just guessing that this is your address, and also that even if this were your address, that you check this account, given the fact that there have probably been at least 35,214 people who at one point tried reaching you this way. Okay, it's more like hoping. Reckless optimism, perhaps. But my cause is a worthy one. You have to get your vintage attraction producers to cast me. I think I'm perfect for the part. I'm skeptical, curious, ready to learn, like restaurants and wine bars, have an eclectic cellar in my kitchen, 2 bottles of dubious French provenance stowed above the stove. I'm also quite charming, contentious, and always hungry for a good debate. I've been catching up on reruns, and let's face it, in the last season or two, most of the guests have been kind of dogmatic and a little overdramatic. A logician would have a field day with the rabbi who answered charges of mediocre pairing with a stammered, "But that's what we serve at Shiva." Bring me in to shake things up a bit. Please. I want to help the sommelier with Mostalier make good TV. Truthfully, I'm just interested in meeting you and figure this whole trying to get on the show thing, and with any luck this email, might make for a good entree. No pun intended. I signed off, yours in Champagne, Peter Hapworth, conceptualist, teacher, Chicagoan, swashbuckler, eater, drinker, butcher, baker, candlestick maker. And that's how it begins.
The romance of the story, which is loosely based on your own romantic adventures.
Yes.
So then how does one begin to take the inspiration of something that happened in your life and then turn it into a novel? Like, were there considerations of, oh, she's going to hate me if I do this? Was that ever a consideration in the writing?
I mean, secretly between us.
Because it's not being filmed.
No, they don't know.
Nobody's
knows.
listening. It's just us.
But truly between us, I have to say, my major concern was not about, will this be embarrassing? You know, do I need to get clearance for this? But really, it was more of a craft concern, which is, sure, there's a lot of life, and a lot of life you can bring to the page, but what of it actually is story? Like, what's actually interesting that's there? So any of those concerns were less about what might be embarrassing to me and more about, well, is this going to be too boring to carry out? Because I mean, certainly you can do it. You know, I could have done something, you know, I'd like into like a documentary where I'm just reporting and just carrying through, and wherever it goes, it goes. I knew a little better this summer, and I done something similar to that in an earlier work, and
this was your first book.
Yeah, so that I just wanted to see what happened when, you know, essentially, I mean, to use like a tape recording analogy, like you press record, it just keeps going, and then you see where it ends up, and that was interesting, I think, for that work. But this, I think, required a little more shaping, a little more like governing of the experience.
I mean, the pressure now is to just, you know, autobiographical writing obviously has a huge history. I mean, this is what we do as writers. We take the stuff that happens to us, good and bad, and we make stories out of it, right? But the pressure now is to just stick to the true story and turn the true story into just a memoir.
But if it were a memoir, I could sell this tomorrow, and now that, you know, because it's a novel, it's going to be a little more work.
Right.
Can you do anything to it? And I thought about that. I thought, you know, I still felt overall there was a story to tell, and I've never been, even though I've worked within certain genres and had certain aesthetics, maybe it sounds sad to say, but I've never been opposed to doing something different, if it made sense to the work, or if it helped the work get into the world. I like a lot of memoir, but you know, it is that inability to, and it's not the fault of the people writing memoir. I think it's the fault of the people reading memoir, where they expect this thing and then they get very upset if there is a little invention or a little compression.
Right. I mean, that's kind of the concern about being two people who work within the criticism. So we just see a lot of books.
Yeah.
So
we see a lot of books.
We see a lot of books. Like, we see them, we sometimes throw them across the room, sometimes make fun of them amongst ourselves, but because of
I actually did watch you today throw a book across the room.
I did.
That is not a figure of speech. You literally did it.
Literally a thing that I did.
And I was very excited by that.
I was repulsed by the book, and so I needed it to be as far away from my body as possible.
It ended up fully across the room.
Fully across the room. But that's then always the concern, is sometimes you can know too much. Like, sometimes you can know too much about what people are looking for.
You know, it goes in a number of ways, and to the extent that you can actually control the process, I don't think you can. And maybe when you can, maybe that's when you've stepped out of actual art production and into something else.
Into selling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to selling, but I don't have those tools. I can't do that.
We've all seen the movies, we've all read the books, we all know how the romantic story is supposed to go. So how do you shut it off when you're trying to write a romantic story?
I think the funniest thing, at least for me, is that I just, no matter what I know about expectations or, you know, and genre expectations, or just, you know, what in theory could appeal to certain readers, I am incapable of doing, and I don't mean to, you know, to sound like I'm beyond
so much
it,
better.
but it's the opposite, actually. I think I admire the people that can go into a genre and do it and get the conventions and just produce a thing.
Yeah.
I'm not beyond that. Again, if you came to me, you're like, I have a magic thing, I will make you be able to do these things, I would take it.
Yeah, of course.
I would buy whatever you were selling if you had that. I didn't set out to do a romance, a chick lit book. But I think the story itself just kind of lends itself to that because it's, there's a powerful female protagonist, and there's, the guy is sort of in development, and I thought that was interesting. I know that exists in the world, and so if that renders it, sort of, in the chick lit realm, it's good because, again, I didn't set out with a genre. I set out with characters.
You know that one of the things that I love about this book so much is the gender dynamic, and I don't mean to sound like it's a like a women's studies book or anything like that, or that you're deliberately trying to upend expectations, but I do love that there is, not only do you refuse to play by the sort of romantic structure, but you also refuse to play by the gender structure, which is that the woman in the book is powerful and devoted to her job, and the guy is less so, and he doesn't resent her connection to the work, and he doesn't leave her because of it. It's really satisfying as a female to read, a female devoted to her job to an absurd degree, to read that that it's not, we have to talk about how she'll be alone forever, because men are very insecure about that dynamic.
And I think that's, again, not to say, I've created something that will correct all wrongs in literature, but
yes, no, you're a genius that has never been surpassed.
I've never done that. Like, this has never existed.
No,
I have corrected.
Totally
not only have I corrected literature, but I've also corrected all the problems in society.
All gender dynamics are now
done.
fixed because of you.
Done. Available right here.
Thank you, Charles Blackstone. I
mean, I live as me in the world, and so that's where I'm gathering experience mostly. So, a long way of getting to. I've never lived in a world. I mean, from when I was, 7 on to now, I've never lived in a world where I believed in those. I don't see a genre, the same thing. I don't see a genre divide. I don't see a gender divide.
Yeah.
I've always said for me, the only way to finish writing anything is to have it taken away from me and to stop looking at it.
Yeah.
And which presents an interesting situation when you go off and do readings and things for, recently published work, because you're kind of encountering the text again. But it's not the same way. And these characters I write are slow to even get into those categories. So the first book, that 20-year-old who's graduating college, was a little behind schedule and not even in any hurry to become whatever comes next.
Yeah.
And then this guy, Peter Hapworth in Vintage Attraction. It's
on sale now.
On sale right now.
I believe so.
Yes, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, local stores, everywhere. So this character is just kind of, be it via his professional life or his dating life, at the outset of the story, he is very much a kid, and so you have this guy that's maybe not quite ready for prime time, but yet thrown into it, and then sort of trying to figure out what it all means as it goes on.
Yeah, which is kind of similar to you and I have talked about how I think you said earlier today, you're only as good as what you're reading, right? Like as a writer, you're only as good as what you're reading. And so if you're sort of reading, these kind of trashy stories, or you're watching these kind of trashy reality shows, that does absolutely kind of, it's like your body is made out of the stuff that you eat. Your brain is made out of the stuff that you read.
Because I mean, as you said, you're kind of a product of your experiences and your influences. So, I mean, it'd be kind of silly, kind of improbable to say, I just exist. I am, I've been descended,
I'm David Bowie.
And there are no references to anything. And I try to include, direct references to things that were influences. I mean, there's a little Hemingway bit going on in his obscure and unfinished, and he'd probably be pissed off if it had been published.
So I'm going to ask you a very loaded question.
Do it.
Extraordinarily loaded
I'll
question.
take a sip to bolster myself.
How do you like working at Blackstone?
Bookslut is...
Please remember that I'm your boss.
Oh God, you're right. All right, so I won't really say.
And you're in kicking range, so.
I love what we do. I mean, we're doing something that exists. I was gonna say exists on the internet, but I think it's bigger than that. That it's just. I mean, when you founded this publication, there was nothing like that around, and you would think afterward there'd been a lot of things to follow, and it still is completely unlike everything else that's around. And I only know this really from working within, because now we're seeing our contributors, have written for other publications, and so, I mean, you read all that stuff, but I try not to. I don't know why. I don't try not to. I just don't really encounter it.
Head.
Yeah, and, so we see so much of what's there, and it's always kind of my hope when encountering another publication that it's like, well, you should know what you came from.
Yeah.
And all these things do really derive from you, and it's true though. And I think also it's inspiring, outside of book criticism, but in writing books and trying to be part of book culture, that you began something out of nothing, and kept it going. Like made it big, and we like to say, I think in our more glamorous moments, like that these things just take off. But I mean, there's still a lot of us involved in any endeavor, and to make it in making it a thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's no way that it exists without you at this point.
Yeah.
So, and I loved your book.
Isn't that funny how that happened?
It's funny how that happened. It's funny how we met. It's funny, the whole thing is funny. Charles Blackstone, thank you so much for sitting with me on my couch and drinking wine, and then I'll just...
Thank you for having me in today.
Absolutely.
And thank you
for coming.
Enjoying the book and for being just lovely.
Thank you as well. Cheers.